What's going on, guys? So we're in Detroit, Michigan, and I'm here for a Ram event, and they graciously lent me this truck while I'm here so I could experience this 2025 3500 Laramie Sport dually truck. This thing is a beast. Go back and check out the first video we did on it. You're talking 5,409 pounds worth of cargo capacity. That's absolutely insane. That is a great amount of cargo capacity. You're talking over 36,000 pounds worth of towing capacity off of a gooseneck, and you're talking 23,000 pounds conventionally. Now, I did a full video on this truck, walking around it, showing you what it's all about, going over the specs, but today we're going to be driving this truck around so I can give you my impressions of what this thing's like on the road, because from a suspension perspective, this is going to be very similar to my F450. This isn't going to have airbags. This is going to be coil sprung up front, leaf sprung in the back, and because this has 17-inch wheels versus the 19.5s that I have, this should give me a more comfortable ride. So we're going to see. We're going to hit the road in this thing and see what it's all about. Hang tight. I'll be right back. Okay, so we're inside of this truck. Again, go back and check out the previous video because we went over all the details. The fact is, this is a great practical package. You're still getting a Laramie, which is the luxury trim, full digital display, 12-inch Uconnect, navigation, all of that stuff, four-wheel drive, beautiful leather interior. You have some gorgeous seats. Sorry, I got my gear and everything set up in here, but this is an absolutely gorgeous truck. I love the mirrors. I love the fact that I can control the spot mirror electronically. Only truck manufacturer that lets you do that. Everybody else requires you to have a spotter or somebody on the other side pushing the mirror in the corners, and that's super frustrating. But this truck is an absolute beast. And again, like I mentioned in the previous video, with 430 horsepower and 1,075 pound-feet of torque, paired to that new Torque Flight HD 8-speed automatic transmission, it drives really nice. I mean, you got tons of power. You can pull a lot of stuff with these things, and a lot of people are going to be looking at this as their next truck. And again, whether the style is dated to some folks or not, it feels fresh every single time they spit another truck out. And I will admit, just like a lot of people admit, when you drive down the road, no matter what brand you drive, when you see one of these, especially this blacked out edition, going down the road, you look at them because they always look great. And I think that this is still a beautiful design, and it's kind of that exact representation of, if it ain't broke, why fix it? So yep, this is a beautiful truck. We're gonna hit the road and I'll let you know what my driving impressions are. Okay, so we are on the road. I am trying to figure out how to get out of here. I think I'm going the right way. This is one of those airport parking lots. Boy, even though the diesel in here is louder than what I have in my truck, it sounds so good. This is such a great sounding engine. And it just feels like a really powerful diesel, because that's exactly what it is. All right, I'm gonna get out of this noisy parking lot where I got airplanes flying over me the whole time. And we are gonna try to get on the road here so I can see exactly where I need to go. It says I have a 43-minute drive to get to Stellantis's headquarters up in Auburn Hills. All right, so right off the bat, I can tell you that this truck feels lighter than my 450. It feels a bit more nimbler as well, even though, you know, I know from a turning radius perspective, I'm gonna have better turning radius, but the steering wheel feels a little lighter. It feels firmer though. So one of the issues that I hear about a lot of times from Ford owners is that the steering kind of feels a bit disconnected from the truck and the steering itself. Basically, you can move the steering wheel around a bit and it doesn't feel like the truck's doing anything. This one feels really well connected. I feel as if I have, I guess, more granular control over steering with this truck. All right, merging on, I'm gonna tell you, acceleration is effortless. This thing really gets up to highway speeds quick. But the back end also feels, I guess, again, a good way to describe it is it feels lighter. It feels as if the back end is a bit bumpier than my truck. Not in a real bad way, but it definitely feels like it is a little bumpier. Overall though, I mean, it handles bumps really well. Really, the only time you truly feel that is when you hit like a big divider or a big expansion joint. and then that's really where you can feel that kind of jarringness coming from the back. But this is a dually. I mean, this is what you expect when you get from a dually. And this actually is a great segue to a topic that while I'm driving this truck, I think people need to hear. You know, I talk a lot about the differences between different types of trucks, different classes of trucks. And when you're talking about a truck like the Limited Longhorn that I drove, that again has under 2,000 pounds worth of cargo capacity, it's like 1,910 pounds or something like that. But it had full air suspension in the back. It was a multi-link air suspension system. It was a really, really, really smooth ride. I mean, that truck felt like my wife's Expedition in the back end. It was a really smooth experience, and one that you rarely get from a 3/4 ton truck. And that's mainly because it had that air suspension in the back, and it's a 3/4 ton truck. It's not designed specifically to compete right against this truck in terms of overall capability. It's designed to be a nice heavy platform that's longer traditionally. I mean, it could be even longer if you get the 8-foot bed on it, but a longer overall package, which is actually going to lend itself to being a little bit better for towing versus like a 1/2 ton truck. The weight of the truck really does matter, because again, it's like that super heavy dog, like a big pit bull pulling you versus a Chihuahua pulling you. If you have a pit bull trying to pull you, it's going to have a lot more capability due to its weight and its overall mass trying to move you in one direction, mainly because of inertia, versus a lighter dog who doesn't have quite the overall weight. And that matters. So a lot of people say, why wouldn't you just get a 1/2 ton versus the 3/4 ton? Well, again, a lot of that comes down to just the overall mass and the power that that truck has, considering how much heavier it is than a 1/2 ton truck, while at the same time coupling it with a tremendous amount of horsepower and torque. Now, this truck is a totally different animal, so I really want you to pay attention to what I'm about to say. I was just talking about, you know, how the back feels stiffer. It definitely doesn't feel as smooth. It feels a bit more jarring when you go over bumps. That's because this is a dually truck with over 5,400 pounds worth of cargo capacity. Again, when we compare that to the 3/4 ton, this has over 3,400, almost 3,410 pounds or more worth of cargo capacity over that truck. Right? Are you hearing me? This is a 1.5 tons over what that truck's total cargo capacity was. And why is that so important? Well, you have to have suspension that can support that. And then the manufacturer, Ram, has to build this truck with excess capabilities to be able to handle things like this big bump that we're going over now, where you're hauling trailers. I mean, you got a lot of dynamic energy that's being applied when you're moving and you're hitting bumps and you're not just static, right? So as you move, you go over a big dip, or you go into a big dip, or over a big hole or a pothole or whatever, you have a lot of dynamic energy that's moving energy. And it applies a huge amount of excessive energy to areas that you need to have built to be able to support that over and over and over again over the life of the vehicle. So that shock in the back that we feel, because right now it's unladen, I don't have anything back there, I don't have any weight pressing down on the back of it, that shock, if you hook up a trailer like a travel trailer to this, that is relatively lightweight, that doesn't truly compress that suspension very well, you're transferring a lot of shock to the front section of a travel trailer, or to a trailer in general. Travel trailers specifically, because we all know that their frames are relatively light duty. They're not super heavy duty frames. I think that car is on fire, so that's not good. Anyways, yeah, you're transferring a lot of shock, and having a really stiff rear suspension is going to exacerbate that shock to that A-frame section of a trailer. And this is a perfect example of it. Again, to get to a place where you have to worry about that, you have to look at these trucks that have 5,400 plus pounds worth of cargo capacity. That's crazy, right? So that's really where you have to compare apples to apples when you're talking about the type of suspension and the type of ride you can expect in dually trucks versus single rear wheel trucks versus air suspension equipped trucks versus trucks that have leaf sprung suspension with airbags, right? There's all sorts of different configurations of trucks, and you need to get the right one for the right application. If you don't, you need to be able to consider modifying something or having something in place that can add cushion where there might not be any. And that's when I talk about suspension hitches, like a shocker hitch, or like an air-safe hitch, or like a CURT Rebellion XD hitch. Basically something that will provide some shock dampening to whatever you're towing if you need it. Now, if I'm hauling a big dump trailer behind this truck, it's not as important. A big dump trailer is going to have a crazy thick, super heavy I-beam or C-beam or box channel, and in most cases, they're going to be well over what you would traditionally see in any type of RV. And because of that, you rarely see front frame failures on those types of trailers, even when you're hauling them behind a truck like this, because those trailers are designed for construction work. They're designed for that heavy duty truck to tow it over and over and over again. That's why you see really, really crazy strong frames on them. But most travel trailers and RVs, conventional bumper pull, don't have frames like that. And because of that, that shock that comes from real stiff suspension in a truck like this could absolutely put a beating on that front A-frame section and put a lot of leverage and energy in areas that it might not normally experience it with a lighter duty vehicle or with suspension or something that's designed to be softer back there, even if it's a suspension hitch. So far, this truck's a pleasure to drive. I mean, I can tell I'm driving a dually. And I love the fact that, you know, when I talk to the folks over at Ram and they say, hey, we're going to put you in a dually because we know that that's what your folks like to watch. I'm like, heck yeah, because people who drive dualies, people who haul big fifth wheels, people who own dualies and have driven them realize that it ain't going to ride like a Cadillac. It ain't going to ride like a Chrysler 300 or a Charger. It's not going to ride like a half-ton pickup truck or a Ram 1500. It's going to ride like a dually. It's going to ride like a heavy-duty pickup truck, especially when you don't have a bunch of weight in the back. And to be fair, probably one of the reasons my truck does ride a little smoother in the back is because I probably have 500 pounds worth of stuff in my toolbox, and I got stuff in the bed, and, you know, that weight does help a little bit because it compresses the springs and it turns them into more of a spring versus something that's really rigid waiting to be a spring, if that makes sense. But yeah, this is a great riding truck. I really like these Rams. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a big Ram fan, so people might not think that because I've traditionally owned Super Duties, but the reality is the only reason I've stuck with the Super Duty is because it has that super crazy great turning angle up front. That's really what it comes down to, and a few other cool features that they integrate into the truck. But at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning of this video and the end of the last video, this truck looks great when you drive by them, when they pull up next to you. When they pull out of shopping centers or out of the hardware store, or when they're towing a fifth wheel or a trailer, I always look at these as being one of the best looking heavy duty trucks, especially in these dually configurations where they paint match everything. I don't know if you guys remember, a couple years back, I had a Ram Media vehicle. It was a red truck, just like this. It was a Laramie. It was red with the sport package. It was pretty much the same truck as this, but just a couple years ago. And I was hauling that Van Lee Beacon fifth wheel. And that was a big, heavy fifth wheel, about 19,000 pounds. We took it out on a road trip, and it was a beautiful setup. I mean, it was probably one of the most beautiful looking rigs you could put together, and I had so many compliments. But again, I'm driving a dually, and it's going to drive like a dually. Tons of power. That Cummins sounds like every Cummins diesel you would expect, just a little bit quieter, a little bit more, I don't want to say refined. It has a little bit different kind of overall tone to it, but it's a very, very good sounding truck. And at highway speeds like this, you know, it sounds pretty much the same inside as any of the other trucks, whether it be my truck or whether it be a GM truck. They're all relatively quiet like this whenever you're out on the highway. You don't have to yell over the engine is probably the best way to say it. But steering is very precise. I love the mirrors. Boy, this was a long time coming, wasn't it? Getting mirrors on these Ram trucks that actually had that really nice towing mirror setup, something that the folks over at Ford and General Motors have been doing for a while, and I just was waiting for Ram to introduce their own, and they have power extending mirrors, power spot mirrors, which is huge. I love the fact that that spot mirror is a power mirror as well. But overall, yeah, this is a really, really nice truck to drive. I'm still about 35 minutes out from my destination, so I'm going to wrap this video up, but I'll have this truck for 2, maybe 3 more days, so I'll definitely be able to give you like a wrap-up of my overall impressions when I've had it that long. Right now it says I have 354 miles worth of diesel left on this tank, and this truck has 5,564 miles on it currently. This is a really, really poorly concreted road. And again, in a dually, you kind of feel that, but it's a great riding truck overall. Big fan of it. Anyways, guys, again, beautiful truck. Check out the previous video if you want to know all the granular details about what I'm driving in, the specs on it, all of the interior features, the back seat, the back of the truck with the ball in it already, some of the access points, all of that stuff, because there's a lot to talk about, and that video definitely talks about most of it. Anyways, guys, sure hope you enjoyed the video. Give me your thoughts. Drop a comment below. I'd love to know what you think about these new Rams. The look has absolutely grown on me. I think it is a great evolutionary change from the last body, which is basically the front end. The interior is largely unchanged, but boy, that front end looks really bold, and they're stuffing it full of LED lights and a lot of great features, and you're still getting a heck of a truck, especially at about $15,000 less than that limited Longhorn that I drove. This truck's only about $86,000, and I say only about, but I think most people looking at this truck would feel like this is the better value for them, especially if you're hauling big trailers. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.